Is it how much there's to offer at the dealer's den? Well, not really. Is it how many people attend? Partially, but not really either. Is it how many fursuiters there are at the fursuit parade, or how punctual they are with their activities? Well, not really either. Well, what is it then? While I wrote the script and my plan sheet to review the latest convention I attended, I thought about these and many more aspects to reach a conclusion as to whether the convention was successful or not. Even if the convention was good, the origin of its success was neither the activities they offered nor the number of attendees. Indeed, they make to a convention actually being good, but that's the result of rather than a cause for success. So what makes a convention actually good? Well, let's find out. Hi everyone, this is Zyly the Fox, and welcome to a brand new video. A good furry convention is a safe space not only for furries, but for anyone who shows a remote interest in what the furry fandom actually is. Should you think about any activities that illustrate such vision? Well, bear in mind a fun community space, a social environment which fosters connections through panels and activities like dances and games, together with its own mercantile touch, like art trading, fursuit making stands, and a good deal of merch at the dealer's den, for example. However, for that to happen, we need to consider the context in which the convention should take place. Why is it that countries like the United States have uncountable numbers of conventions, while entire continents have very few, or even none? That's actually not quite fair. I mean, unfortunately it is, but let's find out. A furry convention will happen and take off only and only if the context in which it appears is fertile enough for it to prosper through the years. A furry convention shares similar points with the business. In fact, whether you like it or not, even if conventions are non-profitable organizations, their main role to society and their socio-economic structure work the same way as a company does. Which is why taking an approach to understanding how a company works successfully is not as crazy as you might think in order to understand how a furry convention can also succeed. In order to understand this analysis, a convention to be good needs to occur in a context where the country's economy is stable, the fandom to which it will cater should be quite numerous, or at least socially well connected, and last but not least, the staff of the event should prove to be strong and unified to face any inconveniences through the time the convention runs or plans to run. Think about this first. A convention can only exist if the country allows the space for it to exist. I don't mean just a literal venue. I mean freedom, stability, and safety. Because let's be honest, could you imagine a furry convention happening right now in Ukraine or in Venezuela or in the middle of conflict zones across Central Africa? People there are literally fighting for survival, for food, or for peace. A furry convention, no matter how wholesome or positive it might be, simply cannot compete with those priorities. Right now, people are literally fighting for survival there. Even in countries that aren't at war, politics still play a huge role. Take dictatorships or corrupt governments. Bureaucracy, censorship, and unpredictable laws make it risky to even organize an event. Imagine putting months of planning into a convention only for authorities to shut it down before they actually see the convention flourish, because maybe they see the word furry as suspicious, or simply because the organizers didn't pay the right fees, quote unquote, under the table. That kills trust, that kills growth, that kills actual productivity, and the fact that a furry convention can actually flourish in a context like that. Now compare that to countries like the United States, Canada, or Germany. Love or hate their politics, there's a degree of stability, legal frameworks, and freedom of assembly and speech that makes it possible for dozens of furry cons to bloom. The difference is night and day, unfortunately, with other countries in the world. So the first requirement for a good furry convention, well, I would say that a political environment where people are free to gather, create, and just be themselves, which, mind you, is a privilege nowadays. Given the context of the world's economics, well, the political world and political freedom, those factors aren't enough really. The next factor, of course, will be culture. Is the country open to diversity is my question. Does it support LGBTQ+ rights? Does it embrace internet culture and minorities, or does it repress them? Well, those questions will be the cornerstone for a furry convention to actually try to be successful in this given context. Furries, at their hearts, are about self-expression. Many of us are queer, neurodivergent, or just outside a so-called norm. If the country is hostile to that, then the convention space will always feel unsafe or underground, even if we find refuge in the comfort of a group of like-minded people. Take India, for example. India is one of the largest populations on Earth. It has a vibrant internet culture, and there's thousands of Indian furries online. Yet, if you do some research, there are no major furry conventions there. There are actually no furry conventions. But why? It's no matter of numbers there, but of how those numbers, and now I'm talking about people, and how they go about their daily lives. It is true that the more people there are, the more likely something can happen. For example, countries like Japan, whose territory is small and their population is actually huge. Well, in those countries, in those contexts, numbers actually matter, and they account for furry events taking place. However, there are countries that, even if they have huge numbers, that doesn't happen. And the question remains, why is this not the same scenario in countries like India? Let's take a small tour together. India remains very conservative regarding LGBTQ+ issues, and many furries are afraid of backlash, which altogether stands out as a big stigma that society will put into the fandom provided that they gather in a specific area. Secondly, and in addition, there's a lot of cultural unfamiliarity. Anthropomorphic art and cosplay aren't mainstream accepted hobbies yet, and explaining furry to family or society can be very difficult, especially in extremely religious environments. Lastly, and of course this has to be one of the most important issues, logistics and safety play a crucial role. Organizing events around a niche group in a still conservative context is risky, both socially and financially. But how? Well, compare that with countries like Brazil. Yes, Brazil has its issues, let's be real, but culturally speaking, it's more open to carnival-like expressions, costuming, and queer culture altogether. That is why the Brazilian fandom, from what I've seen, is one of the most thriving communities in Latin America, together with Mexico. In Brazil, there are 3 conventions, 3 of which actually are growing, and such growth and visibility is because the society in which they take place actually allows that to happen. So, socio-cultural aspects also matter together with logistics. You should not organize a furry convention in a city without an international airport, but at the same time, if a society embraces diversity, furry conventions can actually thrive. If it doesn't, the fandom stays small, hidden, and often online based. Audio Jungle. And of course, I'm gonna talk about this. Economic context actually matter, because money is what makes this loving world go round. Let's not kid ourselves. A furry convention is an economic machine, whether you like it or not. It needs hotel contracts, staff logistics, flights, merch production, food, drinks, and endless behind-the-scenes expenses. If a country's economy is unstable, with high inflation rates, crazy taxes, and low wages, well, that's a recipe for disaster. A convention will eventually suffer. Attendees can't afford budgets, hotels become unaffordable, and foreign guests simply, well, they will stop coming if it's not convenient for them to pay high prices for a convention that they can attend in their context for a lower price. Take countries like Venezuela as an example. Inflation there makes it almost impossible to lock hotel contracts without prices skyrocketing every month. How can a convention plan a budget under those conditions is my question. Even if it were to happen, it would become very local, very small, and often quite invisible to the global furry scene. Unlike Venezuela, that could happen in any other country from Latin America or even East Asia, unfortunately. Meanwhile, the United States has a relatively stable economy despite numerous complaints, and furries there often have disposable income. That's why you see huge conventions like AnswerCon, Midwest Fur Fest, and BLFC actually pulling thousands every year and becoming even larger and larger with every passing edition. Even Europeans or Latin Americans sometimes plan their whole year just to fly, and if they can attend, and if they have their papers ready to access the US, that can actually happen. Alternatively, this reflects not only an impossibility to shine in the furry scene, but also how much human potential that falls unheard, since it will hardly ever be seen by the global community if they just remain isolated and stagnated in their local context due to economic unsustainability and inability. So, unfortunately, for those living in the southern hemisphere like yours sincerely, the economic health of a country doesn't just decide whether a furry convention can survive, it decides whether it can become internationally relevant or even successful in time. Without financial stability, a convention will slowly fade into obscurity or remain a local meetup rather than a thriving annual event with flows of international visitors, and so on and so forth, if you know what I mean. But here's the final piece of the puzzle. Even if the political, cultural, and economic conditions are perfect, a furry convention is only as good as the community that attends it. And here I'm talking about the staff of the convention actually having good relationships with each other, knowing how to organize, but also the people attending their conventions. If you want to make it clear, take Rainforest, one of the biggest cautionary tales in our fandom. Despite being a well-established convention with years of history, located in a country whose economy was stable and the social approach to the community was even favorable, the behavior of some attendees spiraled out of control. It's no secret at all that there was vandalism, property damage, and outright chaos. Well, the result of that, you might be wondering, that convention lost its venue, local hotel chains blacklisted them, and the event was permanently shut down, unfortunately. And this, alternatively, shows that no matter how good the planning is, if attendees don't respect the space, the staff, and the community, a convention cannot survive. The reputation of one bad year can echo for decades, and other conventions have to work twice as hard to rebuild that trust with venues and the public. So, should you ask what makes a good furry convention after everything? Well, it's not about what you see in the convention, but what fosters the convention to actually have what you see. It's not just the number of fursuiters, the size of the dealer's den, or even the dance competitions. Those, as we said before at the beginning, are results, not causes. I would say it's a combination of both the external conditions, like politics, like culture and economy, but also the internal culture of the attendees themselves. A convention thrives when people respect the space, look after each other, and remember that they are representing the fandom as a whole. When both factors align, the rest just follows naturally. The art, the fursuits, the unforgettable memories. If the soil is fertile for these to emerge, they will come up naturally. And maybe that's why furry conventions feel so magical. They are not just gatherings, they are proof that for at least a weekend, the world outside gave us just enough space to come together, to build something unique, and to celebrate the community we love. And let me tell you guys, if you like the video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you have anything to share or anything to add, please comment what section you'd like to debate over. I love those. And please, remember to share this video with someone who also likes analyzing these factors, because I am sure some of your friends might also think about these issues in the fandom as well. So I hope to see you guys in the next video. Take good care of yourselves, everyone, and see you in the next one. Take good care of yourselves, everyone. Meow!